Alright, so this video is going to be a little bit different. This is just kind of like, honestly, this is just kind of like a very selfish video that's only for me. I'm just going to post it because I know that there's probably 3 people out there that will kind of enjoy it and understand where I'm coming from. I really just want to just kind of do a video of like the overview of this old car and just show like some of the dents and tell the stories behind the dents and the dings and like just share some of the memories I have in this car. That way, in like, I don't know, 10 years, I can look back on this video and remember my old car. So for like the 2 of you that understand like the relationship that you build with a car, you'll enjoy this. All right, so first of all, I'm not even entirely sure where to begin because me and this car have such a long history together. So this is a 1999 Toyota Corolla. It has a 1.8 liter engine that makes, or at least off of the factory floor, made like I think 100, maybe 110 horsepower. This one probably makes 70, maybe, if I had to guess. It has, I believe, just from memory, 295,975 miles, I believe. I'll check. Apparently the windshield wipers are on. 299,972. So basically 300,000 miles. I bought this car in 2012, I think. 2012 for $1,500. And when I bought it, it had, I believe, 140,000 miles. And it was in much better condition than it is now. It had, I'll show you the front and stuff, but it had a lot of like rock chips and like little dings and stuff in it when I bought it, but nothing anywhere to the degree of what it has now and what I put it through. But at the time, whenever I ended up buying this car, because at the time I had just started working at a pizza place and I was delivering the pizza, and I had a 1995 Jeep Wrangler that had a 4-cylinder 2.5 liter and was lifted, had 30, I think, either 33s or 35-inch tires. It was a 5-speed also. This is also a 5-speed. Because I had fallen in love, or I'm still in love with standards and shifting my own gears. I don't know what it is. It's just one of those things that this is actually the car that I learned how to drive stick on. So that's actually pretty cool to me. That this is the first thing that I ever drove with a stick. It's what I learned on, and then I got to drive it for about 10 years. So anyway, I had that Jeep, and I was delivering pizza, and it was all right. The problem with that Jeep was, well, number one, it was a Jeep Wrangler that was lifted with a 4-cylinder. That's problem number one. It was extremely slow. Problem number two was it only got like, I think on a good day I was getting like 14 miles a gallon maybe, and delivering pizza 14 miles a gallon, that's not that good. That's rough. So what ended up happening was that Jeep developed this problem where it would, and I still to this day am not exactly sure what was wrong with it, but it developed this problem where if I started up the engine and got it warmed up and then shut it off only after it was warm, and then immediately tried to start it back up within like I don't know, like maybe a 20-minute window, it wouldn't start. It would just crank all day long. So it was like, but if you drove it somewhere, you could start it up, drive it somewhere, and then let it sit for like 30 or 40 minutes, and it started up, and everything was fine. You could, drive it somewhere, let it cool completely down, start it up, everything would be fine. It had this like just weird window of time where if it was warm and then you turned it off, there was like a a window of time where you could not start it back up until it like cooled down to a certain level, and then you could start it back up. And I ended up putting a bunch of money into it, replacing like all kinds of different parts, almost everything on the besides the engine itself. I replaced, never fixed the problem. So I needed something to drive to be able to do my job. So my grandpa had this car, and he sold it to me for $1,500. So, I had already, like, he sold it to me like a year after he got it, because he's, you know how old people are. They're always buying and selling cars and boats and trading stuff around and whatever. So he ended up with this car from some type of boat, trailer, box truck trade or whatever, and he ended up with it. So he sold it to me. And then he, before he sold it to me, he got it, like a year before he ended up selling it to me. And that year, or that summer, is when he ended up teaching me how to drive stick with this car. So then I already knew how to drive it and all that stuff. So I bought it. So then I sold my Jeep. So this became my daily driver. And then I delivered pizza in this for, I think, 4 years, maybe close to like 4.5 years of delivering pizza. Which the one thing I do want to say is that the reason I love this car so much is because this is the most reliable vehicle I've ever owned in my life. Because I told you about my Jeep Wrangler, and that thing let me down all the time, constantly broke down with the starting issue. I had to, whenever I would deliver pizza with it, I would literally have to show up to work, start it up, and then just let it run. Just let it idle the whole time that I was there, unless I knew we were going into like a dead spot, and then I knew it was going to be able to sit for at least maybe an hour to be able to start back up again. So this became the daily driver, and just to have a reliable vehicle, what was amazing. Which, I mean, that's always amazing. But I was so impressed with just, especially now looking back, how incredibly reliable this car is. Because you got to think, I was delivering pizza 5 days a week. On average, I was driving probably 120-ish miles a day, 5 days a week. Stop and go traffic the entire time. Delivering pizza, very little interstate, maybe just a little bit here and there if you get like a faraway delivery, but mainly stop and go, nonstop, which is one of the hardest things you can do with a vehicle, is any type of delivery. And it never, in the 4 years that I was delivering pizza in this thing, the only time that you could say it kind of like let me down a little bit was I got a flat tire one time, and that was it. Other than that, I never experienced a single mechanical failure. It never left me stranded anywhere. It never failed to start. I never even got stuck anywhere in the snow. Nothing. It was absolutely performed flawlessly. So that made me, coming from a Jeep that broke down all the time, that made me like just really fall in love with this thing. Because I view it as basically unstoppable. And also, I mentioned that I learned how to drive stick on this car. There's something about shifting gears that this car made me just absolutely fall in love with. Even though like delivering pizza, stop and go all day long, constantly shifting gears. First, second, third gear. I've probably shifted those 3 gears delivering pizza 10 billion times. Just first, second, third, back and forth. It felt like that's all I ever did. Not one time in all those years of driving did I ever, did the thought even cross my mind that, oh, I wish I had an automatic, or, oh, I'm tired of shifting gears, or none of that. I don't know what it was. Anyone who drives a stick and is like a car person, you'll understand this. But whenever you have a car that you shift the gears, it's almost like you form a different connection with the car. It's hard to explain, but it's just like, it's just like a different connection that you form, and it almost makes you like build your relationship with the car differently, especially like in because this car doesn't have ABS, it doesn't have traction control, it doesn't have really any safety system at all other than like airbags, which I don't even know if they work. Seatbelt, that's it. So like, especially like say in the snow, you're in complete control of this car. So if you end up in the ditch or something, or if you hit the brakes too hard and slide into somebody or slide into a ditch or whatever, that's completely on you. There's no safety system here to save you in any type of an emergency. So building off of that, I think most of you wouldn't know this, but I would consider myself a pretty good driver. And I think that all the years of driving this car kind of like formed me into being a good driver, at least in like in snow, rain, you know, whatever. I'm not one of those people that like the roads can be completely ice, and I'm not someone who's like afraid to get on the road because I know how the vehicle's going to react. I know how to get myself out of certain situations, and I feel like that's all those years from driving this car with no safety nets whatsoever. You're just in complete control. So that's another thing that I feel like I've like built a relationship with this car through, because we've been through a lot, which I'll get into here in a minute. Another thing I want to mention that I absolutely loved about this car, and it just recently went out because I don't drive this car anymore because I don't hardly drive at all anymore. Period. And when I do, I just drive my truck. I used to drive this car probably, I don't even know how many miles, maybe 30,000 miles a year, because I bought it with 140,000. It's got almost 300,000 on it now. I drove it for like 10 years, but the last probably 4 of those years, I was my work was only 5 miles away, so I was only driving 10 miles a day, and then maybe like a little bit on the weekends. So that equals out to almost nothing because I never really leave the house. Like now, I probably drive 2,000 miles a year. I would bet is all, because I leave the house maybe like twice a month. But anyway, I used to drive this thing, 30,000 miles a year, maybe even more, because for a while I was delivering pizza 5 days a week in this car. So that was about 120 miles a day. And then the last probably 9 months that I worked at the pizza place, I was also in tech school to be a diesel mechanic. So tech school was an hour and a half one way. So, and it was, I think one way was like 70, maybe like 77 miles one way. So I would do that. I would go to tech school in the morning or during the day. And then one day during the week, Monday through Friday, I would also deliver pizza. And then I would deliver pizza Saturday, Sunday, open to close. So working open to close, I would probably drive close to 200 miles each day, maybe like 150 or so. And then the like 77 to school and back each day throughout the week. So I don't know what all that adds up to, but I was changing my oil every like 3,000 miles, and I think I was changing it about once a month for a good stretch of time. So me and this car never stopped. We were always going somewhere every single day, nonstop. And the thing that I was impressed with was up until like a few months ago, whenever I went to pull this thing into the garage to film a video with it, the air conditioner always worked. And then just a little bit ago, whenever I was pulling it in, I tested the air conditioner just to see if it was still working, and it doesn't work anymore. So that was kind of sad. But for all those years and all those miles, the air conditioner always worked, and that always blew my mind. Because Before this, nothing I had air conditioning. Before this car, I had a 1990 Jeep Cherokee, which did not have air conditioner, barely had windows that rolled down. And then I had the Jeep Wrangler, the 95, which was a soft top that obviously did not have air conditioner and barely had heat, because in the wintertime with a soft top, you could put the heat on high and it would get up to like maybe 65 in there on max heat. So to have something that had air conditioning still from 99, even just to have a car that was like almost in the 2000s was crazy. So anyway, I think you get the point. I drove this car a lot, made a lot of fun memories in it, fell in love with it. So the first thing that I'm going to show you, the first like, I guess like, battle wound you could say that I'm going to show you is the dented oil pan. And I'll tell you how the oil pan got dented. And I was delivering pizza. Delivering pizza was, I could probably do a whole video just on the adventures of delivering pizza, because it was such a entertaining time in my life. But anyway, I was delivering pizza and it was dark, and I was very frustrated when this happened. Bad things always happen whenever you get frustrated, because something about delivering pizza is that it seems like whenever you're delivering pizza, it seems like all the people that order food are all the same people that never have their houses labeled, ever. And I'm sure people in the comments, if you deliver things like DoorDash or even pizza or whatever, you'll probably attest to this. This, like, it was almost like 100% of the time. If there's a whole street of houses and every single house is labeled with their address, and you're trying to deliver to a house on that street, whichever one isn't labeled is probably the one that's going to order. So anyway, it was dark one night. I was frustrated because I couldn't find the house number, and it was one of those streets where none of the house numbers made any sense. You know, it wasn't like 1, 2, 3, 4. It was like 75, 96, 300, and like nothing made any sense. So I was driving up and down this road, going way faster than I should have been, flying up and down this road, trying to find, like where is this house number? And then, and this is also, this is like 2014 probably. So like I didn't have a phone that had GPS on it. I had like an old school GPS that mounted to the windshield that like couldn't find where I was half the time. So I'm just driving up and down this road trying to find this house. And say this is the road. This is like the main road, right? There was a side road that I ended up going down, and the main road was just like regular asphalt. The side road was a gravel road. So I ended up going down this road, and for whatever reason I think the house is out this road. So I'm going and going and going out this gravel road, and I end up figuring out, okay, this house isn't down here. And then also the person that I'm trying to deliver to wasn't answering their phone, so they couldn't give me any directions. Because for some reason that's another thing that happens whenever you're delivering something, is like the people make the order and then it's like they just completely forget about it. And anybody that calls them, they just ignore everybody that calls them, and they just expect you to somehow just find their unmarked house in the middle of nowhere. So I end up figuring out, okay, this road's not the road. I pull a U-turn, and then I'm also running late, so I'm going way faster than I should be, and I forget. So like I said, the main road is this road, and this is the road that I'm on. I forget that I turned on this road because I've been going up and down the main road so many times. I forget that I'm on this road because I'm frustrated. So I'm flying down the road, and then I start to see the main road, and then I remember, oh, I need a turn. So I hit the brakes, but where the road was gravel, I end up just sliding on the gravel. And then at the very end of where the gravel met the asphalt, there was like a little bump kind of. So I hit the brakes and I'm sliding on the gravel. And then whenever I hit that little hump, the front of the car just bam, smashes into the road, dents the oil pan. and I end up kind of getting launched into this person's front yard who is on the other side of the main street, and I like kind of end up, I don't want to say airborne, but I probably got like a couple inches in the air and end up in this person's yard, and I like slide sideways, and I stop in the in this person's front yard. I look around, I kind of get my bearings. I'm like, okay, something very crazy just happened. Kind of look around. I'm good. Everything's good. And then I go to speed out of this person's yard, but where I'm in this person's yard in the grass, my tires aren't getting that good of traction. So I'm like spinning in their yard, trying to get out of their yard. And I see in like my side mirror, their front porch light turn on, and somebody opened the door as I'm in their front yard, trying to like spin out of their front yard. And I end up getting traction and end up leaving. And I'm sure that person is just wondering like, who is this person and why are they in my front yard? But anyways, that's how the oil pan got dented. I'll show that to you now. All right, let's get under here. Let's see. Where's the oil pan at? Oh, there it is. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's kind of, you can kind of see where it's dented. Yeah, you can kind of see it there. So now let's go ahead and just look at the front, and we'll go over some of the dents and dings that happened here. We'll start with this. This happened because of one of my friends who asked me if he could. He didn't really ask me. He just kind of did it. He kind of told me that he was gonna. If you've ever seen the TV show Dukes of Hazzard, they're always run and slide across the hood of their car. He wanted to do that on my car, so I was like, sure, whatever. And he did it, but then he had a knife, or I think it was a knife that he had in his back pocket, and it dug a nice little gouge right there on my nice, beautiful paint. So, and then on the front here, you can see all these little rock chips and stuff. This is what I was talking about that it had whenever I bought it. I don't know how a car with 140,000 miles gets this many rock chips in it. Some of these I'm sure I contributed, but it had a good bit of these whenever I got it. Now, the hood is also completely dented. Well, it's also, I don't know if you can see it, but it's being held up by a 4x4 because the hood latch, this is another thing that's another like little quirky thing with this. The hood latch likes to latch onto the hood, but then not let the hood go. And you have to keep it really oiled up for it to like actually function. Or else you end up with like a pry bar trying to like break it free, which I've done on many, many, many occasions. So some of these dents are from videos. I think like some of this glue and stuff from the like Wish dent pullers and stuff. Some of these other dents. But this hood was very dented and destroyed before that. As you can see from the headlights, how the headlights kind of stick inside. And that is because with this car, I have hit 3 different deer with the front of this car. And then one time I had a deer hit me on the side, but that didn't leave any dents, thankfully, because I would hate to have devalued this car. So the first time I hit a deer with this car, it was pretty bad. I don't think the front, you can kind of see, this kind of got pushed in a little bit, but thankfully not too bad. The hood was extremely bad. It was like all like hooved up and like bent, and I had to like take a hammer and beat it out from the underside. Both the headlights were broke, so both of these are aftermarket. I think also both turn signal lenses were also broke. I lost my emblem. And I want to say there was something else that it messed up. But the first deer that I hit was it was really bad. It really did a lot of damage. And then the next 2 deer that I hit were both because I hit them all literally in the exact same like 100-foot stretch of the road that I lived on. So I was kind of like, you know, after the first one, I was kind of aware of what was going on and realized that these deer just like jumping in front of cars. So the second two, I kind of hit way softer, and then they just ran off. The first one, I think it died. Now let's go ahead and look under the hood. So first thing you'll notice here is the battery. And if you look really close, the astute eye will notice that this battery clamp right here, is actually doing completely nothing, because this isn't yeah, you can see it's doing absolutely nothing because this is not a battery clamp. See, somehow this battery is probably 6 or 7 years old, I would say. Whenever I replaced this battery, somehow I took off the original clamp and then lost it, and then still have no idea whatever happened to that. But I ended up finding a I don't even know what I think this is a handle off of some type of tool, or maybe like a flower pot or like a vase, or like something of my mom's had a handle on it that I didn't think needed a handle, so I took the handle off and then put it here to make like a makeshift battery holder. And then I think for a while I had like a piece of a 2x4 or something running across like this, and then had this on top of it to like keep pressure down on it to like hold the battery in place. And I think that kind of something happened to it. It fell off or whatever. So then from that point, 6 years ago or so, up until right now, the only thing that holds this battery in place is I have a piece of paracord right here that is tied to the to the fender, and then that keeps the battery from sliding over into the engine and just kind of like keeps it in place. And that the paracord system has worked completely flawlessly for all this time, and it's actually pretty impressive. So as we work our way to the back of the car, you'll take note that I have a extra power wire here, and you'll see what that's for in the trunk. So here's something really annoying about this car, is the door handles are made of like the cheapest plastic known to man. I have broken off, this is I think the second outside passenger door handle that this car has had, and I've replaced the outside driver door handle I think 4 separate times, and the inside driver door handle like I think 2 times, because I don't know if I'm just rough on stuff or if they're just garbage. But the driver's side one broke first, and then on the driver's side for like probably a year or so, this was how I opened the door, which is how I opened the passenger door. Because of the way that it breaks off, there's nothing to grab a hold of. But sometimes, like now, you can put your thumb up here, and now this doesn't work in the rain. I'll show you how you have to do it in the rain. But if it's dry, you can even use 2 hands and use one to kind of get your fingers to kind of grip it, and then you can kind of get underneath the bottom of it, and then you can open the door. That's kind of like my preferred way to do it. But in the rain, that absolutely does not work. So in the rain, you have to take advantage of this sharp little piece here, and then stick your finger up under here, under the sharp piece, and use that, which, ow, it really hurts. Stick the meat of your finger under that piece, and use it to kind of get that first little bit, and then get your fingers under here, and then you can open the door. And I'm so cheap and stubborn, I did that on the driver's side for like more than a year. And then what I would do is whenever the window is down, I would just reach in and then just use the inside handle. And then the inside handle on the driver's side broke one time, or twice it broke. And then what I would do is, the very first time it happened, I broke the outside handle, and then maybe like 6 months later or so, broke the inside handle. So then, if the window is up, I would just do the little trick I just showed you. And then whenever I was in the car, I put I configured like a little zip tie to hold the rod outside so it wouldn't fall inside the door. And then I would just pull on the rod. And I did that for like probably, I don't know, year or so, year and a half maybe. And I finally replaced them. And then I started replacing them every time they broke because I got really good at it. But they still break a lot. So this is why that extra power wire is coming off the battery, is because I have subwoofers in this car. I actually have a full audio system, sort of. I have the stock mid-range aftermarket tweeters, which only lasted like a week before they blew out, and then subwoofers. But all of the speakers are rewired to run off of the amp. So the sound quality was a little bit better than stock, but not by a whole lot. So I started off, we'll talk about this in a minute. So I started off with 2 10s and this custom built, well, I say custom built, but really just thrown together box. I think I used some type of online calculator or something, me and my dad did, to figure out how much air volume 2 10-inch subwoofers need. I don't even know if these things will work anymore. And then I have a Polk Audio 660? Yeah, 660. I don't know if the 660 means 660 amps, because I wanted to say that this was a 800 watt amp, but that could be wrong. It could be 660 for all I know. You can see whenever we first installed it, this like floor mat thing is like real slick, and every time that I would take off really fast, the box would slide back and the amp would smack against the side of the it would hit the back of the trunk. So I took a piece of PVC pipe and then cut it to length and then just jammed it in there and had it hold on there. And then I took this piece of wood and screwed it to the base mat, because I don't think it's even back here anymore. I got some like firework fuse because I don't know, shenanigans. Yeah, I don't think it's back here anymore. But I used to have one of those 12 volt. Actually, you know what? So I know exactly where the fan. So it was. I had a 12 volt, just car fan that you clip onto like your rearview mirror or whatever if you don't have air conditioner to blow air on you. I had one of those clipped on that piece of wood, so that because the amp was getting hot. So what ended up happening to that fan was I had the fan back there to keep the amp cool, and I just like ran a wire from the amp to the cigarette lighter to keep it cool. But that fan ended up, if you go back to one of my 9-volt battery videos, I think the second 9-volt battery video I did with the 509 volts, I think in that one I took the fan and put a bunch of batteries through it, and that was the fan out of the trunk of this car. So anyway, I put the amp in there, built the box, everything was great, music was loud, a lot of bass, and then for some reason I decided that 2 10s just wasn't enough. So then somehow or another, I think in like some type of like weird trade with somebody or something, I ended up with another 10-inch Sony Explode in a truck box. So it's like it is like the potential output isn't really, how do you even say that? It doesn't put out, it doesn't perform at its maximum capacity because the box is not big enough for it. But I still added it to the added it, wired it in, and so then I had 3 10s, and then I felt really, really cool because I had 3 10s. And then probably 3 years ago, no, probably 4 years ago, the alternator started going out in the car. So then I had to turn the bass down real low, because if I was driving at night, if I was listening to the music loud at nighttime, every time the bass would hit, the headlights would dim down real dark, and then the car would kind of, if it was like really loud, if I was like, say, if I was going like on the interstate or something, I could feel the engine kind of like almost like hesitate every time like the bass would hit, because it was like sucking so much power. And a normal alternator, if you check your battery on your car while your car's running, it'll probably be like 14.4 volts. This one, if you check it whenever the car's running, is only like 12.2. So it's like just barely enough that when the car's running, it keeps the batteries charged. And then I drove it like that for the next like 2 years. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call it there, just because I could talk about this thing for days. I could just go on and on and on and on and on about this thing, because I just enjoy it so much, and I have so many memories and just so much experience driving this car. I could go on for days and days. There is a couple more things that I'll mention. One, this car, in my mind, this will be the greatest car that I ever own in my mind. Like, whenever I'm 90 years old and I think back to the greatest car I ever had, I'll think of this one, because there will, hopefully not, but there will probably never be another car in my life that I own that I will put through the same amount of abuse that this thing has been put through, and it will survive and still be there to tell the tale. Also, a couple things. I forgot to say that this car burns an insane amount of oil. Burns more oil than anything I've ever owned in my life. I think it burns. Well, it depends how you drive. If you drive normal city driving, it'll burn about a quart of oil for every 1,500 miles or so. You're going to burn about a quart of oil, which is kind of crazy. So, because it only holds 4 quarts of oil. So, if you change your oil every 3,000 miles, you're burning half your oil capacity between oil changes if you don't ever add to it. I always got in the habit of just adding a little bit of oil every time I got gas, because it just burned so much. And that's if you're driving normal city driving. Now, if you get on the interstate and say you want to, go fast, or say you want to like pass somebody or something like that, you could blow through a whole quart of oil in like 50, 60 miles if you run real high RPM for. I mean, if you run high RPM for just 5 minutes, I mean, you're probably gonna burn half a quart of oil. It just the higher the RPM, you burn way more oil. I remember I used to, whenever I would drive this thing to diesel school, where I had to drive an hour and a half one way. If I drove at 65 cruise control at 65 miles an hour, I think that's where I would burn about a quart every 1,000 miles, give or take. Now, if I bumped that up to like just from 65 to bump it up to 70, I was burning like a quart every probably 600 miles, just bumping it up that 5 miles an hour. And then if you go 75, I mean, you're burning a quart every 500 miles or so. I mean, it just eats oil, or I guess it drinks oil. And then also, just for those that are curious, now I'm not saying I ever did this, but theoretically, the top speed of this car is about 107. That is theoretically, that would be the fastest that it ever got up to. And that's like now, theoretically, downhill, you could go about, the speedometer maxes out at 110. You can max out the speedometer downhill. But on flat ground, theoretically you're only going to get about 107. And that's and then at 107, it feels like an absolute death trap, like you're about to die. Because 107 in this feels like probably 300 in anything else. So theoretically, that's the max speed for those that are curious. So hope you enjoyed this random video about my car. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.